we just watched the performance by Lil Baby real quick to refresh our memory, and my issue is I didn't like the depiction of the Rayshard Brooks shooting, and then I didn't like the little what would that the speech that girl, whatever her
Yeah.
name is, gave or whatever that was. I just feel like it bothers me because, like I said beforehand, I do believe, and I said this several times on the podcast, we need police reform. But if we're going to have this conversation, we need to have it properly and not dilute it with our. How do I say this?
Politics.
Sure, yeah.
It's politics. Yeah, I agree. I didn't like the fact that she said Biden. She referenced Biden's name in justice directly.
Well, she was asking Biden, like, you need justice.
Was
it was a
she
call
asking
it was a call,
Biden?
Yeah,
or
it was
she
a
said
call
Biden will demand justice.
I think it was a call to Biden.
Okay, I hope so because I didn't like that part at all. Honestly speaking, as far as when it comes to the depiction of the Rayshard Brooks thing, I don't. It doesn't bother me as much because I'm black, to be honest with you, and I'm not saying that to be racist or anything, but just because I'm more familiar, I guess I would have more empathy.
You've had
for
personal experience with police, and I've been there with you when it happened.
So
it's a thing. I'm not going to deny that it's a thing.
But but this is my thing. So when we start talking about the depiction of it and how it's being used, I understand that. Especially when you're talking about as far as like news outlets and everybody, if you're putting misinformation out, it's cool. But we're talking about art now, and his artistic interpretation or whatever you want to call it, of even if it's not Lil Baby's, if it's the set designer or whatever. And I have to play devil's advocate because nobody will. But
that's what makes conversations fun.
Yeah, it's art. So whether it didn't get into the nuances of the Rayshard Brooks situation enough, maybe the Wendy's was symbolic for you to just think about that case. So it's not that we have to show you the specifics of what the case is. We're just showing you this is an example of what we're talking about as far as the song is. Remember, it's a 4 or 5 minute performance.
Then is this wrong of me? I said this beforehand, but is this wrong of me to say then that I feel like I agree that if there's a message they want to get through, I feel like using the Rayshard Brooks incident was the bad incident to use.
I actually agree with that.
I agree it was a bad incident to use too.
Because, okay, so like,
I don't care.
I get the whole like, obviously, black men are at the disadvantage of being pulled over by the cops and stuff like that. And that's hard because if you correlate this to Rayshard Brooks did reach for the taser, and that's a
and he did
big
shoot
deal
the officer
in the situation.
with the taser.
Oh, the taser hit the officer?
He shot the officer with the taser.
Oh, okay.
So that's like a big deal in that case. It's just, I don't know. You have to see, like, if your mind goes there, then
does it say
serious.
Wendy's
like,
there?
The situation is completely different.
Oh, I don't think it says Wendy's because it'd be product placement, but it looks like a Wendy's building. Like that is.
It actually does because it's like a drive-through. Yeah, like there's a car parked to go up to a window. So I guess it is implying that that's the Rayshard Brooks case.
It's heavily implying it.
I agree.
That's a straight up Wendy's without the logo.
I agree. I just, okay, for example, we're talking about the interpretation instead of police brutality or whatever the fuck, or the police reform or whatever the fuck we're supposed to be talking about.
But that's what
That's my point. That's my whole point.
No, I agree with you. And maybe I'm giving the energy to the wrong conversation. But the reason why, like I said, it bothers me is because if you want to have this conversation, at least depict it properly and accurately. Because the problem is people are going to look at this, and I'm obviously one of those guys, and I'll take the flack for it, is there were several incidents they just glossed over because they wanted to paint the image simply as a black man asleep in his car, got pulled out, and got harassed by officers to the point where he fled and got shot. No, there's more to it than just that.
Oh, and then I'm still not trying to, like,
I'm
you know where I stand with the Rayshard Brooks. Like, it looked like he turned his taser in. You know what I think. But I will say this. There's no excuse for anything. Every case is a single case incident. But it's hard for somebody to tell you to look at the nuances of certain cases when certain things have been happening for so long. So it's now we're ready to talk. So now it's like, okay, we're ready to talk. We're ready to have the conversation. That's not exactly how that happened. That's not exactly how that happened. But people really just, at this point, they're tired. They just care about the conclusion. The conclusion was he died. And so they just didn't want him to die. Like, it sounds dumb. I know there's a lack of actual, thought process, but there's a lack of thought process in how these people have been handled for so long. So now we're arriving to a place where we finally want to I guess, address the subject and matter, and we're kind of like it's almost like talking to a victim of a crime.
Let me address that.
But it's like talking to a victim of a crime right after the crime, but expecting them to be calm. No. Tell me exactly what happened. Tell me exactly.
What you say, Doc?
I said that's what like a case is though. Like when it happens to a jury, it's after the crime. And they kind of talk about it and they break it down and they try to figure it out logically.
I'm talking about as far as handling the sentiment of like, okay, like the general topic we're actually talking about is people not looking into the nuances of these cases and just assuming I guess racism or police brutality based on a black person being shot by a police officer, a white police officer, or whatever it may be. And I'm saying the reason that people aren't looking at the nuances of the cases anymore is because it's happened for so long without it being addressed. And so these people that aren't looking at the nuances, I'm not excusing anything because they should look at it, but I'm explaining it because they feel it may not be warranted, but they feel mentally distressed they're not looking at the details because they don't care anymore. Because when the details care,
I don't disagree with that. I guess my
cared.
issue is the energy of an expedited, I guess, trial or solution to this problem.
Oh, it's impossible.
Exactly. That's where I'm coming from. Is first off, I want to have this conversation, and I've said this several times before, but I don't feel like we're having the appropriate conversation to get to a proper solution. And second off, it seems like people want an expedited solution without it being a proper solution. Mm-hmm. And honestly, those are my two biggest problems with this whole thing.
They want to justify their emotions.
Exactly. That's my biggest problem with this.
100%. I 100% agree with you. And I'm saying that it was created.
And that also bothers me. You even said, like you said earlier, this is art. And that this would have been a good segue into the other topic I want to talk about. But it's manipulation, deceit, because they're altering the events to suit their artistic medium to get a message across.
That's art.
But the problem is they're doing that with something controversial and, like we said, too political.
It's also art.
I don't know if I like that.
That's art. Like, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, but literally what you're defining controversy and all that stuff, like
but that's not
my depiction of it, like if I present,
then I guess I'm tired because I feel like I've been.
But that's what I'm saying.
Spoon-fed this stuff.
But I'm saying before we can get to, I don't want to say before we can get there, but we need to address news. We need to address media. I'm not saying you don't address it, but we need to address actual media sources that are informed information. My problem
is the media players
exactly. But my problem, I guess, my problem, I guess, with when we broach this conversation is there are so many media outlets and things you should go to before we arrive at Lil Baby's performance at the Grammys. And so, as far as getting
I've
information,
gone through those.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm just saying
people.
And the conversation in general. So whereas there may be a group of people
to go through that have the conversation.
But there's a group of people who will watch the performance, be upset by it, be incensed by it, but also not want to hold their news network accountable. That's my problem.
I agree
and so
completely.
you only start seeing the inconsistencies when you're not there. When you're not part of the inconsistencies or you don't have no relation to the inconsistencies. So now everybody can all of a sudden point out the inconsistencies in Black Lives Matter. Everybody can point out the inconsistencies in the LGBTQ community. Everybody can point out inconsistencies in these communities because they don't have any part to do with them. So it's just pure logic. But they don't care. He don't care. He doesn't care. As far as he's concerned, that's what happened to Rayshon Brooks. He doesn't care. He just knows the guy shouldn't have been shot, and he was shot. That's how he feels. That's why he didn't even write the song for him. He didn't even mention him in that song.
Well, no, I think it's what you said. He didn't even probably
he didn't put it together.
Direct
no, not at all.
It was probably some other producer that he
hired.
And
then the song is actually critical of black people too.
No, yeah, I even said this. Like the song's fine. I got nothing issue with the song. The song was a good song. I just, like I said, the beginning of it, the inaccurate depiction of the Rayshon Brooks incident, and then the little speech thing that lady gave.
That was weird.
She's apparently.
I think if they would have gone with like the Breonna Taylor case, it would have been like, yeah.
That would have been hard to show.
That or even George Floyd, but like, I mean, they were just like, what can we do that's really fast? But.
And I feel like George Floyd. This is where.
I would agree, but I agree with
George Floyd's
overused.
Floyd
Been better. It is overused.
That's why they didn't use it. I'm being honest with you. They were like, let's use George Floyd. Nah, he's played out. I'm dead ass honest with you.
Is that wrong to say?
That's the conclusion they came to. They didn't say it probably like that.
Wrong?
But George Floyd is played out. They've milked it.
I kind of wish they would have had though, because it would have
led
led
better.
That
was a genuine issue for 9. How long was it? 9 something minutes.
8 minutes 15 seconds.
40 something.
8 something.
Dude, I understand he was trained, but dude, for 8, come on, dog. You had a level of what's discernment, man.
And it also, like, I guess I'm not trying to talk about it too much, but it's revealing that it took such a crass, like such an egregious act for the awareness. Like, we're overcorrecting, we're overcompensating now. So like, but it's weird that it took that though. Like that was the trigger. Like I got to stand on this for this shit to pop off. I got to stand on this nigga's neck for 8 minutes. That's when we gonna start talking about got some real change. It's not the protest. It's the nigga that was on his neck that started the change.
I would disagree. I think it's a combination of the knee on the neck and then the protest that ensued.
No, I'm talking about literally. Like, the protest don't happen without the knee.
And that's why the conversation is annoying, because you got people focusing on the inaccuracies of the depictions of the police shootings and then people focusing on the reaction, which are the riots. It's
Who's
like
wrong?
Actually,
Not
it was
what's
a slow
wrong.
build, man. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, every 4 years of my life, I've seen a black man killed publicly on television by cops, and eventually, like, I mean, what was that guy who just got shot? We had a podcast about him. He got shot while going through houses just before George Floyd. Yeah, and then all of a sudden that happened, and I was just like, oh shit, like, dude, it had all been building up, and everyone was at home, and everyone was able to see it all at once. Everyone just kind of said, no, man, like that. That's why I actually think in the video, if they wanted to be a little bit more positive, I guess is the word to use, maybe. But yeah, the George Floyd incident leading into the woman like giving the speech and stuff like that, like the positivity that came out of those protests would have like been more sensible, because that was the message. I kind of understand Gene's sentiment where like the message gets a little blurred when you see Rashard Brooks, and it's like, no, dude, that guy actually like he tried to fight the cops in some sense before, you know, being shot to death, and then leading into the rest of it. I personally don't like the ending, just because it confuses me in a sense. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old and kind of more conscientious, but like at the end, it kind of promotes revolution. Like, that's the whole idea of him standing on the car, standing in front of the fire and stuff like that. Like, that's the concept of revolution.
But what was the revolutionary part? I don't think in my opinion, it was.
He's reenacting the image of the guy on fire in front of the police station when it was burning.
Yeah.
So like that's revolution, and essentially like when you see it in another country, when it happens, when people stand in front of fires like that and with their fists up and stuff like that, just because it's not happened here a lot, but in other countries, like that's
telltale sign.
That's a seed of revolution. So you have to kind of think about that. And now that it's actually real in front of me, like, it's cool. I've listened to Rage Against the Machine. I've actually been like jamming and be like, yeah, this is fucking awesome. But now it's actually possible in front of me. I'm actually taking it seriously, so I'm having to think about it. Like,
and I
think some sense, when you look reaction from both of y'all.
To piggyback off Doc though, because part of me, like, I'm okay with the energy, because like I said before, I'm okay with police reform, and because I do believe our elected officials are on both sides are corrupt to a fault. I do believe we need some kind of, I'm reluctant to say revolution, but at least some kind of constitutional convention. Let's come together and figure some stuff out. So I'm like that revolution energy, I'm okay with if we can properly maintain and harness it without it getting out of hand. And the problem is we're not doing that. And I don't know if you agree with this, Doc. I'm fearful of that energy getting out of hand and leading somewhere we don't want it to go.
That's actually what I'm thinking about too.
Are you talking about in general or based off this video? Are we still talking about the video?
No, the video, the sentiment,
well, I'm
the
doing
idea.
It overall.
Okay.
Because like to me, the video and the fact that it's broadcasted to the entire country, like, if you watch the video, it vilifies police throughout.
Yes.
So, cops are bad, right off the bat. Cops are bad. And
okay.
like if
they did,
like
come
it
on.
makes
No,
it makes
I'm saying
the
you could say
conversation
that, but you could also
happen.
say that it vilifies cops to black people because they didn't harm anybody else in the video.
Well, what about the white supporters of the black people?
So
like,
he's saying
there's tons of people supporting that, and so vilifying them completely automatically gives a target to everybody. So it makes the conversation harder to be had, and that's the kind of thing I have to think about, where it's just like, whoa, and it's like there's also black cops, like, you know what I mean, like all the cops in that video are white, and so it didn't show like a racial interaction between a black cop and a black man and stuff like that.
This is my problem. This is my problem. You guys are asking for all of this nuance in one. Not you're talking about general, but all of this nuance in the one video, right? But there is none of this nuance in history as far as describe. And it's not a envious. It's not a spite. It's not revenge. It's none of those emotions. But when you have like the stereotypical black character in all the shows, or the stereotypical this, the stereotypical that, the generalization of anything, this, that, and the other thing, like there has never really been a backlash for it, or until now, I guess. So now, like a generalized cop,
to this degree,
yeah, but now a generalized cop. Now we should be sensitive of generalizing cops. Like I can't.
Well, the only reason why I'll agree to that. I do agree to that point now, the whole part we got to be careful about generalizing cops in negative light, is because crime rate is on the increase. Deaths are on the rise. And that is because of, like you said before, the overcorrection.
Mm-hmm.
We've overcorrected to the point where defunded our police. We abolished police. We had what was the term?
Defund?
The blue wave, where a bunch of cops just quit in masses.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think as Minneapolis, they have a rise in crime issue, and they're actually now trying to increase funding to get more cops to come back.
As they should.
That's why it's like we got to be careful with this discussion, because
but
if we
weren't careful to what led us here. That's my problem.
When are we going to be careful then?
That's what I'm saying. You're putting it on the black people to be careful.
I'm putting on everybody.
No. I'm talking about
in this video.
Instance,
You're right.
I'm talking about this specific example. I'm not talking about any. I know where you stand everywhere else. I'm talking about this specific example and us being this critical of this video. 1 and 2, the video and the song, they don't even sound like they go together. Honestly speaking, they do not. Because what he's depicting in the song, and it's not the person and they're just not the same. Okay, as far as the revolution, why is it okay for everybody else to be revolutionary, and then now it's a problem for people to be revolutionary? All of our revolutions have been violent.
You have to fight,
but all of our revolutions have been violent. They have been, and we got here because of violence. So what's the problem?
I'm just saying.
If I'm gonna fight, I at least want to make sure the cause I'm fighting for is something
I'm exactly with Gene. Like, if I'm gonna fight, if I'm gonna do something like that, I'm gonna make sure I'm doing it for the right reason, and I'm not gonna hesitate when I do it.
That's also fine. But we can't. But we're talking about a music video now, so we're applying all of these concepts to just this one video, and that's my problem.
But yeah, I understand,
because we're still just talking about the video as if it's that important. I just don't think it's that important. As far as swaying minds, public opinion, this and that.
Well, I'm not trying to give too much weight to the video itself.
That's what I'm saying. And so you shouldn't be fearful. You shouldn't be, like, there are other things to be fearful of before the Lil Baby revolutionary video, is my point.
I'm not fearful of it. I understand why you would say that. It's more of an annoyance, because who is the... Or guys, more of a question. I really don't know. What's the target audience? The age?
I don't know. It was the Grammys.
Demographic that watches the Grammys.
Old white people. I ain't gonna lie to you. That's how I feel about it.
I disagree with you. I think it used to be old white people. I think now it's a lot of young kids watching the Grammys. Because who was in it? Lil Baby, Cardi B. You think old white people are watching the Grammys now?
Let me tell you something. No black people still watch the Grammys.
I don't know. That's a question.
Like, black people
what's
have
the demographic
and
the
Grammys.
age demographic that watch the Grammys?
We've never watched the Grammys.
My issue is the audience that watched it. Because this is my cynicism. I'll reveal a little bit.
It's white men who did it to themselves. It's white people who did it. Gene, the people who put this video together are white. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
That would bother me even more.
If the director isn't white, the person who picked the director is white. And the reason why they did it is because it was a business move.
Why do we got white people depicting black people's strife? Isn't
why we got white people voting on the hip hop award for the year? Huh?
I agree. Yeah. What the
so
fuck?
that's what I'm saying here. So, like, us being critical of this video on the Grammys, I'll put it like this. I'm only gonna say this once and one time alone.
All right, let's move on.
Macklemore won the Grammy over Kendrick Lamar's "Good Kid, Mad City." That was the album talking about thrift shopping. That's why I said I just can't, like, my irritation is us being this critical of something that I don't believe in, as far as the Grammys. Like,
but
they don't
I
have
actually
any
feel
standing.
like Kendrick's album is something that he would want us to dissect the way we're dissecting this right now.
No, I agree with that. I'm saying he lost to Macklemore Macklemore's album was about thrifting, and the Grammys
It's supposed to be about content.
decided to give
yeah.
him the Grammy over Kendrick. The same Grammys who put this performance out. That's what I'm saying. They have no credibility.
So, yeah, I guess that makes some sense to a large extent. It's just completely shallow, and so maybe the video that was shown was shallow to an extent, and that's why we're interpreting the way we are.
Exactly.
But I kind of go back into my argument where it's just like, yeah, I do side a bit with Gene on the nuances of it. If it is shallow, then I at least want to interpret it and be like, okay, yeah, this thing's just shallow. Cool. I'm just gonna take it for what it is and just be like, it was just primetime television.
Exactly.
But I agree with you. It probably is shallow, and I don't dispute that. It just goes back to I say this all the time. I just really don't like when people use things to manipulate, deceive. I just don't like that, and that's how I viewed that. And that's why my question is still
television anymore. We can't listen.
No, it's not about television.
That's how it is, though. Every show has a goddamn underlying.
Yeah, I guess that's my biggest gripe. Is it's hard to enjoy entertainment now because it's fueled with propaganda. Exactly, it's not anymore.
Entertainment.
I think it's always been though, man. I think you're just kind of stumbling into it now.
So I've just been naive. I've just been naive.
I actually think you're starting to see art critically, and you're just kind of being like, "Whoa, what the fuck?" Because it's always like, dude, I've taken classes on this and stuff like that. I literally took an entire semester on Chaucer, on how one fucking book, The Canterbury Tales, was literally what's the word I'm looking for? It was he was basically interpreting like the king and how we could talk to the politics at that time. And the entire novel was literally him just being like, "Hey, this is what you should do, but I don't want to get my fucking head cut off, so I'm gonna tell it through this story of this character. Here you go." And like, you just got to think critically about a lot of that stuff. It does get annoying, but after a while, you also got to start putting up your blinders and be like, what do I want it to let in and what do I don't want to let in?
They should teach a class on 90s cartoons and how much shit they snuck past us.
That'd be interesting.
Them shits was so sexual. Those cartoons had Smart Guy, even the real shows. His brothers were constantly trying to fuck something.
They were.
And they would fuck something, and they would dance after they fuck something. Like,
dude, Smart Guy.
Dude, his brother was getting pussy.
Yeah.
But anyway, what's up, guys? Thanks for watching a clip of Fake Deep Thinking. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, like the clip, leave a comment, and check out our page for more content. Full episodes of Fake Deep Thinking are released every Friday on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Check it out.